Good afternoon, viewers, and welcome to Futsal868 Corner Talks. My name is Geoffrey Edwards, series moderator and president of the Futsal Association of Trinidad Tobago. Futsal868 Corner Talks is an online meetup series where global sporting professionals share their experiences and perspectives on the fastest growing indoor sport in the world, futsal. In recent sessions, we expanded to discuss topics of social issues and their relation to sport. Our main objective is to sensitize and educate sports stakeholders on the sport of futsal and other pressing local and global issues. On Monday, the 5th of October 2020, the National Budget Statement 2021, entitled Resetting the Economy for Growth and Innovation, as presented by the Honourable Colum Inwood, MP, Minister of Finance in the House of Representatives in Trinidad and Tobago. As with all installations of a Caribbean budget, of a national budget, no matter where in the Caribbean you are, the next step is the financial management of government agencies, including the Ministry of Sport and Community Development and their respective stakeholders, business entities, which include profit and not-for-profit organizations, and citizens alike, especially during this entire COVID-19 pandemic. Today, in episode 30, we talk sport and financial management. Join us in the part 2 of this 3-part series, are Caribbean financial leaders. Starting off with, I introduced Mr. Darryl White, CEO of RBC Financials Caribbean Limited. Good day, Mr. White. Glad to have you.
Hi, how you going, Joe? Thanks for having me on today.
Definitely a pleasure, sir. Definitely a pleasure. Up next is independent consultant and former chairman of the Jamaica Stock Exchange, Mr. Ian McNaughton. Good day, Mr. McNaughton. How are you doing?
I'm good, Jeff. How are you doing?
Blessed and highly favored. It's an honor to be able to have both of you all gentlemen, avid sport fans, one a Manchester United fan and the other a Barcelona fan. One wearing his jersey with pride, the other having to switch his jersey because of the defeat to Arsenal in what a historic Sunday has been. And also, match football practitioners, Darryl and Ian, it is a pleasure. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
So as we saw, our budget in Trinidad and Tobago was read last month. As it relates to national and community-based sporting organizations, I would like the opening remarks from both of you all in terms of, from a macroeconomic standpoint, the definition, what is financial management? And I start with our guest, our Caribbean guest, Darryl, as you may want us to do, as we learn from our great institution prayers. Ian, we ask you to answer first, please.
Well, having lost that game today, I thought I would have been second, but anyway. Financial management in its truest sense is the effective and efficient management use of financial resources to achieve the aims and objectives of an organization. In the Caribbean context, in the sporting context of the Caribbean, or community levels, this is primarily the organizations really might be afforded by sponsorship, benevolent contributions, whatever other means to achieve the mandate of their organization. And I do not see much difference between both organizations except for scale. National and community organizations have the same type of mandate to support the viewpoints and the wishes of their cohort. National, obviously, for the country, and community for the community. And they are both required to understand the requirements of proper financial management, which includes the planning and the monitoring of such plans, and the planning and the implementation of such plans, and the monitoring of those plans to ensure that they are properly managed and the results are at least understood.
So, White, speak to us.
Yeah, and I'll take that pass from Ian and chest strap it to say that financial management to me is about sustainability, if I take one important word, and the other word associated with sustainability would be independence. We have to recognize that finance is a resource, like any other resource. And like any other resource, you want to get the best value out of it. But finance is a critical resource because it welds together all the other resources that an organization may have. In the sporting fraternity, the resources typically are the talents of the individuals, the management skills, the infrastructure around it. But we could have all those things, but if you don't have proper financial management, you cannot sustain those resources or sustain the operations. And there's a joke we have in Trinidad, Jeff, I'm sure you've heard it, that we think we probably have more stadium per capita than many places in the world if you think of the amount of stadium that we have. But in terms of what we get out of it, out of the stadium and out of the facilities, in the absence of proper financial management, it's difficult to sustain the infrastructure, and it's difficult to sustain the returns to the numerous stakeholders who are involved in an enterprise. So whether those stakeholders are players, people who provide services to the players and to the environment, shopkeepers or bars or restaurants that are close by a sporting event, or the community that benefits from it overall. Without proper financial management, we like to describe finance as the lifeblood of an enterprise. Without that flowing properly, you simply can't keep it going. In financial circles, if I'm to put on that hat, we'd always say that more enterprises fail because of lack of cash flow than of anything else. So financial management is about building a sustainable model to finance, to provide the wherewithal that your enterprise gets all that's required to pay its bills, to reward its stakeholders, and to generally sustain its existence.
It's interesting that you say the lifeblood, because at the end of the day, I've myself come in as a sport tourism provider and a national sporting organization leader. I have definitely come to see that. So the next question for us is, what financial controls and best practices should sporting organizations implement? And this is a very important question, because I recognize that sporting organizations compartmentalize their operations, where many of them do not think, understand, or properly implement financial management. So again, Ian, question to you. What financial controls and best practices should national sporting organizations, community sporting organizations implement, as what Darryl said, to be able to make them the lifeblood of the organizations?
Okay. Whether national or community or high school or otherwise, all organizations require good corporate governance. It is necessity. It's a necessity. What it does is that it provides transparency, it provides accountability, and without those two characteristics in any organization, you lose credibility, and eventually you lose relevance. So first and foremost, there has to be a good corporate governance structure. Whether it's a board, whether it's a committee, whether it's a management structure, there has to be good corporate governance. So that's at the strategic level. Once you get down to the operational level, you have your normal accounting infrastructure, which pretty much ensures that you're accounting for all your revenues and your expenditures properly. And at that level also, you also need to ensure that you have proper management that is facilitating the management of those functions. So first and foremost, there has to be good governance. And then operationally, you have to have good systems to ensure that you manage the resources that you have in a manner which can stand up to scrutiny.
Managing your resources, very, very true. Darryl, you have worked RBC for a number of years, and you have been in touch with many industries. What industry do you think that the sporting industry should adopt in terms of best practices to be able to have good governance, as Ian just mentioned?
Yeah. That's an interesting question. No, I like this. I see sporting as entertainment. So I think the closest nexus that we can have. As a matter of fact, I see it as part of the entertainment industry. People say sports. I think sports is entertainment. That essentially what it is. Whether and the entertainment industry involves everything from music, theme parks, cinemas, whatever we do in terms of leisure and entertainment. Which is why on a Sunday evening, we look forward to football, whether we're playing and partaking in it, or if you're looking at it on television, or you're looking at any other sports. I tell people I'm a self-confessed sport junkie. The only sport I do not look at is poker. When I look, I don't consider poker a sport, but when I see other entities, other enterprises at work, I see possibly entertainment as one you can draw an nexus from. And look at how entertainment has evolved. If you before this you counted on record sales, you're not going to make money as an entertainer anymore. Because technology changed that, and access to material changed that as well. So you see, and in the entertainment industry, what you actually see is that on an individual level, on a small group level, you have people who replicate their intellectual capital, which is what their music is really, okay, and their talents, okay, and they're able to control it, locate it, sell it. Now, of course, you always have intermediaries in sales, and more importantly, to leverage off a global infrastructure for the effective exchange of value. So that's when I see the entertainment industry. I see the entertainment industry do that. Now, if I look at how the entertainment industry reports and controls, it's a little different insofar as, whereas if you look at music and the like, it's a small enterprise. There aren't as many stakeholders. But typically in sports, there's a much wider stakeholdering. And if I come back again to Ian's reference to the need for reporting and proper corporate governance, and not just reporting to me, but integrated reporting is important, because even though we're talking about finance, if you do not show that you're doing work with your community and talk about what the impact on community is, if you do not show that you're giving back, if you do not show that you are developing people and there's growth in the individuals within your organization, if you do not show that you're affording opportunities to those who may not have had opportunities before, you're not going to bring together a consensus of the people who will give finance to your business, whether it be the corporates, whether it be a fan base, whether it be the random person on the street who just has an affinity to how you make them feel. I think one of the big challenges actually of sports is that sometimes people aren't clear on what they're selling. And if you're not clear on what you're selling, you're not clear on what you're accounting for.
So with that being said, many have argued, because you have aligned the sport industry in the Caribbean, and more so in Trinidad and Tobago, to the entertainment industry. But many may argue that there isn't much of an entertainment industry in Trinidad and Tobago, so to speak, given the fact that our soca music has not necessarily reached global, or I should say, sustained global dominance as compared to reggae and dancehall in Jamaica.
Yeah,
others have said that there is a sport industry in Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean, because you have companies like Sports and Games who are selling sporting apparel. You have athletes who are going to make a trade, such as the Caribbean Premier League cricketers, or those who go to IPL and Bangladesh and all the other countries. So some say that there is, and some say there isn't. Ian, my question to you is, the alignment that was made between sports and entertainment by Darryl, do you see that alignment in terms of where the sport industry can get best practices from? Or do you see another industry that we can be able to say, I see you as a big brother, I can follow you in doing the right things?
Well, there is a nexus between the sporting industry and the entertainment industry, as Darryl said. Because obviously sport is entertainment. Where I think to digress is the governance side of that nexus. Because a lot of people look at the entertainment industry, and if they are not in it, they look at it as fun. When you think about, let's say, the music industry, reggae, dancehall, right? It is only the people who are actually in it, who are actually managing these artists, who are actually taking it seriously. Others on the outside are looking at it as, hey, it's music, it's fun, etc., etc., and they don't understand the business side of what is required to keep this thing sustained and relevant. And as a result of that, what you will find is that the industry ends up being taken over by other nationalities. Japan is big on reggae. Very big. It's almost bigger than Jamaica in many instances, right? Because they have pretty much looked at it as a business and actually created that infrastructure to keep it sustainable and have it growing. Where I would look at as a industry to develop governance structures is Darryl's industry. And to a lesser extent, the banking and the financial industry, by very nature of what it does, has to, especially in the Caribbean, because the Caribbean comes under a microscope when it comes on to finances, etc., because of the interaction with the US and the other global entities. But the financial industry is very, very tightly managed, it's very tightly governed. It is, and I'm not saying things don't happen, but they are usually caught pretty quickly. Whether they are punished or not is another story, but they are usually caught very quickly. That industry, I think, can offer the type of blueprint to run and manage sports, because sports requires a lot of money. And once you have a lot of money coming through an entity or an environment or an industry, it needs to be managed properly. Because the transparency and the accountability now takes on another level, because there's a lot of money transacted in sports. And as a result of that, I just think that that whole governance template from the financial industry could be used to make the sporting industry a lot more effective and give it a lot more credibility with the people who are looking at.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you said, Ian, you mentioned something as regards to management and noting that the persons who are taken seriously in the entertainment industry in Jamaica are the ones who manage. Do you, and I just want to add a little yes or no quickly before I move on to the question, does management to both of you all gentlemen equals competency? And competency in the sense for sports being competent to run a sporting organization. And I just want a quick yes or no before we move on to the question. Darryl, yes, no?
Yes, absolutely, yes.
Yes.
Ian,
Yeah.
right. So with that being said, because I asked that question leading up to this one, what would you all look for when advising? Because you're saying, Ian, that we should take note of the financial sector. So I'm asking you all now, what would you all, as investors, potential financiers, or advisors to potential financial investors, be looking for when it is you're looking to be a part of a sporting property? And for the sake of my viewers, I want to explain sporting property, meaning a sporting organization or anything that a sporting organization puts out that can be of financial viability. So back to you, Darryl.
Okay, I don't know. And just as I jump into that, Jeff, I want to Ian mentioned that he sees banking and finance. I've been a banker my entire life, being a good template. My concern about banking and finance being a template, just by the way, for governance, is because that our industry is so highly regulated. It's regulated to the point of being restrictive, and understandably and properly so. But for me, sports and entertainment is about creativity. And it's very difficult to corral creativity. And so much so that when I look at many of the big sporting dynasties that we have, you realize, one, some of them are publicly traded, but not too many have broad ownership. In the USA, a lot of them are actually owned by individuals, billionaires who I wouldn't say, and by the way, a lot of them, the billionaires, they don't make their money in sports, They go into sports after they've made their money. Now, coming back then and associating that whole conversation around a conversation with investors and people looking to be, and investors are a stakeholder, but they are a financial stakeholder in a different sense than others. So if I am a fan, I'm a financial stakeholder to the point that I might buy a season ticket or I might buy a jersey. That's the extent I'm a financial stakeholder. If I'm a player, I'm a financial stakeholder in another way. But if I start talking about investors, one of the things you have to build in order to attract investors to sports and the sporting industry in the Caribbean, not just Trinidad, but in the Caribbean, is like any other climate. You need to build the supporting industries around sport. So for instance, if you go to where I've been to stadiums, basketball games, I've been to football stadiums in Europe, and so have you, Jeff, and I'm pretty sure you as well, Ian. And you even look at the physical infrastructure to get in and out of a game or a stadium. You walk out of the stadium and you walk onto a train and you go. If you go to baseball in the Bronx, the City Field, literally the train is running right outside City Field. So 1 minute you have 50,000 people in a place, and within no time flat, that 50,000 people are going into the bars around, restaurants, train, and in and out as smoothly as you could go. And by the way, interestingly, a lot of that infrastructure also manages entertainment, because a lot of them use the sporting infrastructure for entertainment as well. So the multi-use type facilities. So you need to have the infrastructure and the supporting industries. You need to have the size. You need to have what in business we call the demand conditions. Because if you don't have a big enough market, or if you don't know how to reach a big enough market, it's going to be difficult to get investors interested. You quoted the IPL. The reason that the IPL is attractive, yes, we could fill a stadium, right? But when the IPL is playing in St. Kitts, you're lucky if you have, 7,000 people? The population of the island may be 60,000. You don't have the critical mass there. Okay, and by the way, what we really create, and this pandemic has been interesting, because when you see what we call the bubble now, right, and you look, for instance, at the NBA, they simply created a new arena, a virtual arena for them to compete. Now it's sportsmen and entertainers, and yes, I think they need people as well, but they're competitors, because Jeff, you and I know that if we go to play in an indoor court and nobody else is watching, we as driven, as committed as if we probably playing in front of 200,000 people being looked at millions around the world. So you need to have the infrastructure. You need to have the demand conditions. And why the IPL works is because it broadcasts in a different time zone. So the time it is broadcast and where it's being broadcasted, and there's enough support there in advertising, in viewership, obviously, which you have to have. So you need to have those factors if you're going to start talking about investors coming in, because investors have a keen eye as to where they will get a return, how they will get a return, and what that return will look like. And if you cannot show them these structures, whether it's the supporting industry, the demand conditions, as I would say, in terms of if you have enough people to look at it, all right, and then the factor conditions, which is the talent of the people, because we one of the things we always think is that talent is enough. Right? Because we know, and Ian in a better position to speak to that ever than before. We know that talent is not enough if you're going to be successful in anything, sport being one such instance. So investors look at the entire picture. And when they look at the entire picture, I mean, they basically look at what the return they'll get on the investment will be like, and how they will get that return on investment. And if you can't have that conversation, if you cannot show and demonstrate a business model, and by the way, the other thing about investors is investors tend to be in for the long haul, the type of investment we're talking about. In other words, you're not looking for a return that will come from one game. You don't watch the Caribbean Premier League and see the first year they probably didn't make money. Second year, I don't even know if they make money. Maybe third year they might start to break even. Yeah. But so you need patient capital as well. So I know we talk about what we tell investors, but I think first of all is about how we attract investors. How do we show investors what we have, what we've put together, what we're willing to commit to get them in a space where they get the return they're looking for.
Very, very interesting, because you're now speaking to the entire product, and that product, when it is an investor's window shopping, has to be as eye-catching as possible, before they can even enter into the shop to purchase. Ian, what do you say to that? What are your thoughts?
What Darryl just said is right on spot. As an investor will look at and again, we're talking about a situation where an investor is looking at what is either a startup situation or a going concern, right? In either case, that investor is going to have to satisfy themselves that this has a future position which is beneficial to them, right? It's not about what they're looking at today, but whether what is being presented to them has the potential to benefit them at a future point in time. And, a lot of these savvy investors, they will always work out net present value and all that stuff, to say, what, my dollar is worth what it is today. How much is it how much is this investment gonna be valued to me 10 years time? And they do all that sort of stuff. But generally, there has to be a value proposition which is futuristic, not necessarily today. And investors will look at, a company, and let's use a very basic example, a stock market. An investor looking at an IPO will determine whether, and I'm not talking about the speculative investors who are looking at saying that an IPO is going to appreciate by 20% in 2 weeks. Looking at the investor who is looking at a medium to long-term position, right? And they're going to be looking at that company that is putting themselves up on the market to determine in their own mind whether this company is going to be sustainable, financially sustainable, profitable in a sustained way, and that is what will determine their position in that company at that point in time as an investor. So, Darryl is spot on. The package as to what is presented has to be holistic. You have to see the entire picture.
So is it fair to say that the Caribbean has not given good enough packages, products, sporting properties for investors to want to bite outside of the CPL, outside of champs in Jamaica? Is it fair to say, because we have some field properties, and I don't want to go and list them out in case of some of my members who are part of the TTFA might call me out on it. But is it fair to say that we are not presenting a proper enough package? Or from where you all sit, gentlemen, at different levels and at different boards, is it that the entities, the sporting entities, are not even coming to you all? Or is it a combination of those two factors and others? What is going wrong with us in terms of sports and finance when it comes to investor and investor relations? Any one of you guys, we could go.
I'll defer to Ian first, given his stewardship.
And no, it's actually true, because Ian, you represent Harbour View Football Club in the Jamaica Red Stripe Premier League. What made you go to Harbour View? What makes Red Stripe decide to go with the Jamaica Premier League? What makes the Jamaica Premier League sustainable? And that's a good enough example. Talk to us.
All right. Let me start off with Harbour View specifically. My interest in Harborview developed because of the structure that Harborview had as a club. Harborview had a board of directors. Harborview had a governance structure. And Harborview had an approach to the business which, separate and apart from football, really was about developing players, really was about the merchandising behind the club, was about actually transacting players from Harborview to other clubs. So that whole gamut of football activity was happening at Harborview. The issue really is that, and I can't speak about Trinidad and Tobago, but the issue really is in Jamaica is that the majority of the clubs in Jamaica are privately owned. They develop from community environments, right? And at some point in time, that type of development becomes non-sustainable. It's usually fostered by benevolence, and that is not sustainable. So, in order for the structure to get to the other level, I'm speaking about Jamaica now, the clubs have to become more business structured. They have to have balance sheets which show assets. They have to be able to put themselves in a position where they can actually go to the capital market and say, listen, this is my plan. This is the academy that I'm developing. This is why I want you to support this IPO, for example, right? Without that, you will not get the quantum of financial support that you need, which comes from capital markets. Sponsorship, limited. There's not enough money around for sponsorship to support over long-term football clubs. I'm speaking specifically about football now, right? There's not enough in the type of structure that we have. So the clubs have to become more corporate. You had mentioned earlier about the whole issue with the US system and the whole franchising and all that sort of thing. Franchising is a good structure, but franchising needs market. It needs market mass, critical mass. Other than that, companies will not support it. Because at the end of the day, a corporation will be looking at this value proposition. How am I going to get my returns from this arrangement? And, you know, so the whole point is that to answer the question you asked initially, sporting entities in the Caribbean have not put themselves in a position to market themselves to be able to attract the critical mass of financing that they need to, because the structure of the organizations are not where they're supposed to be. That's a succinct answer.
Yeah.
Dion, Darryl, that was a beautiful cross. There's a Beckham cross. There's a Beckham cross.
Again, up to head it now.
There's a Beckham.
I just had to finish it.
Talk to me.
I just had to finish it. No, Ian is very right. You know, so we have limitations. Now, you always have to understand what your limiting factors are. So we know we have limiting factors in the Caribbean. We know we're limited in terms of size. We know we're limited in terms of capital. And by the way, when the Caribbean countries struggle with other basic things, sport could be one or two things. One, it could be a fantastic salvation and distraction, and it could lift you because we've managed to bring forth some of the best sportsmen in the world. You just have to think of Jamaica and athletics, right? That lifts the entire Caribbean. If you look at the representation of the Caribbean at the Olympic Games, you know, the $1 million question, or should I say the hundreds of $1 million questions would be, how do we monetize that as a Caribbean or as a sporting space? What is, to me, and I'll tell you as a banker, it is often not clear to me, and this is what bankers tend to ask, what is your business model? What is the cycle of activities that you are doing on a regular and a sustainable business that will generate your ability to repay this investment that you're looking to raise? Now, we have some samples in Trinidad, right? I'm a member of the Queen's Park Oval. I'm not on the management of the Queen's Park Oval, so I'm not going to pretend to speak to it. But that's a long-standing club. And it's a long-standing club that is world famous. Now, we cannot deny the fact that we don't have test cricket again in the Caribbean because of what has happened with cricket. So you're not going to find that cricket is going to pay. We have all these facilities built specifically for cricket. And really, do we get the max out of those facilities? So if you had private capital building out those facilities, you're in trouble. The Oval has always had a membership structure where you're a member of the club, and membership dues is one of the key income streams for that. In every instance, we had to figure out what our offering is and what is the model of operation. If I cannot have a big and expansive model, because I'm going to need more finance to sustain that, if that's the case. If I have a small a cocoon type model, but I have to, and the other thing I will say about the Caribbean is because we have to be able to start to use size in our favor. And by using size in our favor, I mean, one, we're relatively small, be easy enough to connect. We are in a region of the world that is stable in terms of peaceful. People like to come to the Caribbean. They feel good when they come to the Caribbean. You know, I always remember many years ago following cycling, I discovered that there was a whole contingent of cyclists when cycling was big in Trinidad. It's no longer is, would come to Trinidad during winter just to train. Just to train. Now, again, that's a cocoon. Similarly, when leagues have breaks, right? Destination type events, but building out the infrastructure for that and making that sustainable, which is entirely possible. Even other age group events, because most of us who watch sports want to play sports, okay? And I've seen some efforts to do that. I have seen efforts to do it, but what is not clear, what I see, Geoff, from time to time is an event after an event. An event is not a business model to me. You know, so you could finance an event as a project, but it is not a business model. It will not attract long-term financing. It will not attract patient capital. And by patient capital, it will also not attract what I call social capital. Jeff, you know what social capital is? I don't know if you followed in the news recently when we had Errol Fabian, who had fallen into hard times. And he is a keeper of this fantastic history. And he did a huge amount of fantastic work. But he never really, as society, we never paid him justly for that. And when he fell upon hard times and he was about to lose his house as well as his studio, there you had on between GoFundMe and other sources, within that, what was it, 24, 48 hours, he raised enough money to pay off his mortgage. That was social capital. That is people in society saying, you're giving me something of value and I'm going to give you back, okay, because of that. And that is what inspires people to give. And that, unfortunately, it's not a sustainable business model. So we know that there's capital floating outside around there, but you can't lend to that. You need something that is sustainable, and it's a model operation that says, this is why I will attract people. These are the funds I want. This is the return I will give. And this is the experience that people will pay me for, or should I say contribute towards, over and over, because they get value of what I am bringing. And again, like I said, we have many, many examples of that across the Caribbean that we really never build on and capitalize on.
We just want to acknowledge one of our viewers from Holland, Mr. Kerry Singh, who's saying, lovely discussion, gents. Thank you very much, Kerry, for tuning in and taking part of the discussion. And with this being said, I mean, we normally take breaks every 15 minutes. I don't know what kind of sport is that, but we normally do it here at Futsal868 Corner Talks. But the conversation has been so interesting that can you believe that we are close to the 45-minute break, which is I mean, let's take a quick water break and we'll be right back. For those who are joining us, this is Futsal868 Corner Talks on a rainy Sunday afternoon in Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you to our guests. We'll be right back. We're talking sports and financial management with these juggernauts of Caribbean finance. We'll be right back.
Jerusalema ikayalami ilonoloze uhambe nami zungangishilana dawo yami ayikholana buso wami awukholana ilondoloze zuhambe nami.
And we are back, except for one. I think that Ian is dancing his way across to the but definitely we are back in terms of the financial management on sports, and it's very interesting what you mentioned before, Darryl, because I mean, and there he is. He dances where he's coming back. He's coming back, guys. We were speaking to before the break, the different components of financial management and what investors will be looking towards in terms of properties. Now, in every crisis, there are opportunities, and clearly we are right now in a financial crisis in each of our countries, in our small island states, in terms of the Caribbean and also globally. What innovation, noting that there are many innovations in every single industry, what financial innovation and what is financial innovation, and how can Caribbean sports be a part of this conversation to be able to help them overcome this crisis?
And I've seen some fine. I mean, I did mention, for instance, Geoff, GoFundMe and crowdfunding that happens now. So that's something that is very real. So people can contribute very easily to something that they are passionate about. And most times they are passionate, though, people will contribute to something that has meaning to them. So the world is connected more than ever before. And I think people appreciate sports more than ever before as well, because one of the things that happened during this period of lockdown across the globe, the thing that I don't know about anyone else, the thing that I suffered the most from was sports withdrawal. Because when everything was shut down and you couldn't find, I think the first sporting event I saw on television shortly thereafter, I found myself looking at some obscure league in China or something. I never looked at anything that part of the world before.
I was watching Cornhole, the one with
Cornhole.
I was watching Cornhole on ESPN, yes.
Correct. So you suddenly found and you realize the space and the reliance we have on it for entertainment. So to the extent we took it for granted before, I certainly think the pandemic reminded us that we shouldn't take it for granted, and we really do appreciate it. The other thing is that it made us look inward a little bit more, because I could tell you, before, if I were to say I would travel, I might want to go to a basketball game, or I might want to go to a football game, but now I am drawn more to what will happen at home, because the reality is I have to be able to be sustained on what happens in my home market and my Caribbean market. So there are some advantages there as well. And then the final thing I will say is, take example from Barbados that is doing it. The Bahamas is also doing it now, where they're offering people travel visas specifically to be in their safe space. The Cayman Islands, I think, is doing it as well, where you can be in a safe space in a country for a month, 2 months. As a matter of fact, it's 1 year visas. Okay. So bear in mind that as we do that, what you're doing is that we do have a safe space. So, and since sports now becomes virtual, well, why can't the next NBA bubble be in the Caribbean? Why can't it be in Jamaica? Why can't it be in Trinidad? It could be virtually anywhere. So those are we have to be able to say, well, wait a minute, we can, in these situations, to the extent that things become more virtual, we can provide all the comforts of being in a virtual space. And like I said, people love warm weather and beaches. And from what we hear, the Hudson and the coronavirus do go too well together.
Ian, it seems that Darryl, before the break and now after the break, is speaking more to sport tourism. And yes, we are talking financial management and we are talking sports, but we have to be, as you talk about innovation, we have to take what is ours, sand, sea, and sun, and create products that make us viable and also make us have our competitive advantage, natural and also process competitive advantage. What are your thoughts as regards to sport tourism and using sport tourism as innovation when it comes to dealing with this situation of the pandemic and financial crisis?
Okay, sports tourism has been around for a long time in concept, right? It's been around. It's an excellent concept. And you yourself, Darryl, Jeffrey, you know, you have created a product with your Masters League tournament that you have in October every year, which is the sports tourism, right? Pretty much the Banks tournament in Barbados in May, sports tourism. Now, what the pandemic has done is that it has created the opportunity for us to digitally market and sell a product like that. You can create a product, you can create your bubble, for want of a better word, and actually digitally get that product to people who want to view it. So that is where we are in terms of innovation in sports. Sports tourism has not developed to the point where it ought to for the Caribbean, because we have not been able to sustainably package it and get it going at the level that we ought to get it. But in this pandemic environment, we have the opportunity to, let's say, digitally get that product to people who want to view it, who are not participating, because obviously in the pandemic environment, you're not going to be looking at spectators. But the actual participants in the program or in the product, you can now package this and actually digitally get that to people who would like to view it. So that's where I see the innovation coming in this environment that we're in, getting the product to the users in a different format.
That's extremely well said. I want to go back to a point that was made or brought up shortly before as regards to venues, because we are quite aware that sport facilities are key performance drivers and add to an organization's asset base. In the English-speaking Caribbean, most of, if not all of the facilities are government-owned and operated. Gentlemen, do you think that private organizations, including NSOs, should seek to control their financial destination by owning or having their own facilities? Darryl.
Yeah, well, what I would, the location of facilities, where they own, how they maintain it. If one were to go to the market to actually purchase it, it's going to be difficult. Most of the facilities that communities have are communities were there for communities historically. So it was a sporting ground and arena that communities inherited. Some wealthy family may have owned it before and they gave the land, etc. You need a partnership in this thing. So therefore, one, you do need governments. Think about it. For fledgling industries that are important, governments do support it. So nothing is wrong with that. The aerospace industry and the auto industry in the USA, Korea wouldn't be where it is with its auto industry if the Korean government did not, right? So fledgling industries are supported by governments to help them get up, because it's an investment that gives a return in job creation, in attention, and gives economic well-being generally. So it's one thing. I do think that they should be a structure that allows them to own it from an operational standpoint. So owning it from an operational standpoint means that if I keep my side of the bargain and I do the kind of reporting I should do for it in terms of managing this asset, and I deliver the returns in community activities, because I see absolutely nothing wrong with the government giving or the gifting something to someone to manage it on behalf of the community, and the community gets everything they want from it. So the government provides the asset, the wherewithal, and some support, and they have accountability, and they realize I could show you how many people come in, the programs we have, the level of fitness. And by the way, we know the contribution health and fitness makes generally to you economically in terms of keeping people out of the hospital and the cost of managing health issues and controllable diseases. So I don't know that I think it's a challenge for organizations, given our size constraints, to do capital intensive things. I think certain elements of capital should be contributed, and then after that, responsibly managed.
Ian?
Well,
Because does Harborview not have their own stadium?
well, I was just gonna respond to that, because the opposite is Jamaica. None of the facilities are government owned. For the Premier League, etc., and these clubs, they're not government owned. They are private. They're owned by communities or individuals who have grown up in these communities and supported these facilities. So what you find is that the communities have these facilities, and the communities have to find the resources to maintain these facilities. Now, that in itself has its own difficulties, because at some point in time, benevolent aid or support goes away. If I'm part of the community and I'm supporting this club year in, year out, and I fall on hard times, what's going to happen? So there has to be a nexus between the government support from a social perspective and the community management of the facilities, and that has to be done in a sustainable manner to ensure that one, the facilities do not become unmaintained and run down. Two, that whatever support is coming from the NGOs or the government facilities are not misappropriated. So there has to be a proper management structure in place to ensure that this is a sustainable activity. So it's the opposite from what Darryl just described. It's from the community side, with the government supporting rather than the government owning and the community supporting or participating. So it's critical, because what we find out is that sports plays an integral part in maintaining peace. I didn't want to say law and order, I said peace. Law and order is for the US. Right? But for maintaining peace, and because let's face it, football, for example, is a mass sport. The vast majority of football is played in not so affluent society environments. Yeah. So when you really see talent on a football field, it is more often than not coming from an environment that is not affluent. So we have to ensure that we provide the facilities through these community environment enterprises, along with government support, for these individuals to actualize their talent. Because that's where it's coming from. It's not coming from Beverly Hills, or I don't know what port Trinidad's affluent part is. Why was it? Piarco? I don't know.
Westmoreland. Let's say Westmoreland.
Yeah. So it's important, and it's something that we need to get a handle on and figure out how we can get it into a sustainable form.
Darryl, I want to trade back to you. Hearing our Northern Caribbean neighbor speaking to the reverse, do you think that reverse can actually work in Trinidad and Tobago?
No, if you look at the historical context, we have a lot of sporting facilities in Trinidad that were put and maintained by corporates. From Shell, Lever Brothers had a ground that was used at one point in time. Petrotrin, back then Trintalk, and before that Texaco, had some of the best sporting facilities. As you know, Yara in the energy space, Metal, many different corporates I worked in a bank, and the bank had its own grounds. Schools, a lot of schools have their sporting grounds, which are infrastructure. I tell you, we have more sporting grounds and facilities than anywhere else. So where it comes from, but I am talking about a world-class facility that will attract the best in the world to use it at any point in time. Right now, there is a single football ground in Trinidad that everybody knows, and anybody wanting to play football wants to go and play on that ground right now. Which ground is that, Jeff?
I will say St. Mary's College. That's what I will say, but I mean I could be wrong.
I would say the police barracks.
Oh,
Every
yes.
time I drive past
Yes.
somebody, and I believe the commissioner of police, I know he's a big football fan, okay, and invested some significant funds in that ground is a world. And before, it was a horrible ground, but somebody invested money, and it wasn't private money. Not that I know of. I don't know where it came from, but resources were put into doing it. Now, it's one thing, and this is not just a ground. I mean, we're talking generally about sporting facilities. I mean, one of the issues that we have as well is, for a small society, we don't have enough shared facilities and shared resources, which I think is one of the big limitations. You know, we have a shortage of human capital in the Caribbean. When you have an island that has Jamaica is the largest in the English speaking, what, 2.6, maybe 3 million people. Trinidad is 1.2. Guyana is 750,000. How many people do you have and centers do you have that are qualified to provide support for things? Offices, communications, marketing, advertising, and we should really have a shared service model where all these sporting communities should really have certain shared facilities, because it is better to have, to me, 15 great grounds than to have 200 grounds and 90% of them lousy. To have a certain amount of crowd seating, that you could only accommodate X amount in every ground instead of having a ground accommodating the right amount. And I'm speaking just of football here, but to me, it goes across all sporting reality, all sporting fraternities. We need to have a shared services model that helps manage the costs, as well as things we spoke about, like the reporting, okay, and the accountability and the corporate governance. If we have a center for that sets a standard and provides the support for all these entities, because a lot of times people just don't know how to do it. So I don't know, maybe the model in Jamaica, I can't say that, I don't say that it won't work in Trinidad. But my question would always be, what's the objective of the model and how far can it go?
That is very interesting, because, you know, as a people, we always see foreign better than our own local, which draws me to the question: European, American, or based on what I'm hearing here, is it we as a people need to look within ourselves and see what works best for us in terms of business model? So I'm just going to repeat it again, because in terms of the business of sport, you have the European model, you have the American model. Should we take any of those models, or should we just look within ourselves and see what's good for us and make do for us? And then what is good for us? Ian.
Well, the first thing is that you need to examine both models to determine what you can take from either of them to suit your own perspective, right? Either of them might not in themselves be totally applicable, but you need to be able to pick from either of them what suits you. I'd mentioned earlier that franchise system works in the US, but a franchise system needs a big market. Now the Caribbean is made up of multiple small markets. If the Caribbean could cooperate to be one big market, well, you know, you have a basis there to look at that type of facility. But multiple small markets and franchising, I don't know, but I don't think it works, because you're not going to have the critical mass for it to actually be successful. And that's my opinion. I mean, I could be wrong there. The European model, don't know much about it. I only watch football in the Europe English Premier League. I don't know what happens in the clubs, but I would think that from a perspective of a environment that we are in the Caribbean, and each Caribbean island, I suspect, have different infrastructural issues, different cultural issues, etc. But we need to find a way to pull from each of these different systems what suits us as a region. And if we could get the region, if we could get the situation regionalized, it would be even better.
So basically what I'm hearing is we have to look within ourselves, but come together as small island states to be able to find our Caribbean identity, that now we can create our model based on looking at what exists out there so that we can be able to thrive as a Caribbean people. Well said. Darryl, I throw this question out to you. Most sporting entities exist to provide a service to their members or other people and to promote the game for which it was set up. Any financial surplus that might be made each year, while useful in providing additional funds to further the aims of the organization, is purely incidental to the provision of that service and the promotion of the game. Financial stability is still important, as entities that cannot produce a strong cash inflow will not survive. What, from a banking standpoint, and advice from you to national sporting organizations, national community sporting organizations, what are the relevant financial performance measures that these entities need to understand, and the simple steps that they can take to understand global and national financial trends? I know it's a mouthful, but I think it's very important for us to learn from members like such as yourself, stakeholders such as yourself.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I always like to say in businesses like that you could be unpredictable. That what will happen is unpredictable. Is from a financing and from an operating model, you have to be scalable. And what I mean by scalable, you have to be able to upsize and downsize very quickly, relying on what's happening in your environment. So let's suppose, for instance, at one point in time, you have a number of events taking place that you need to have more resources available to you. You have to figure out how to scale up your resources, and you have to and similarly to give you a chance to get more revenue. And you have to sometimes be able to figure out how to scale down your resources in order to contain cost. Because if you end up with out of scale and you have a lot of assets that you have to maintain and you can't maintain those assets, your costs are going to be out of whack. One of the things that we have, one of the tools that we have that we did not have before, because we talked about today's world, is we have networking and connectivity. So the ability to outsource many different things in bringing together an enterprise and an activity is much greater than it was before. And we have to start thinking that way. So if I see a business model that from time to time, sometimes you're going to have a surplus and sometimes you're going to be in a deficit. The other thing is that you have to build a buffer. So therefore, if you know that your flows are going to be up and down, you have to know where the break-even point is, if I would say. And from the outset of your enterprise, you have to say that I need a certain amount of access to capital at certain times that I have tucked away. Now, but mind you, having capital tucked away that is not working for you is not an efficient thing for a business. But for a sporting enterprise that says, okay, and maybe this comes to Ian's space where you have broader membership. Because if I have broad membership, I can call on members to put in capital at a certain point in time. And I can also build up a capital fund. That will say I have a fund that is devoted to certain times or events or occasions. So it has to be a very real part of financial planning. One, be scalable and be able to scale up or scale down, pull resources in and shut down resources to manage cost and revenue. And two, build up buffers of capital. And I would say the third thing, be very disciplined in your financial planning and execution. People tend to go into events and they spend money and then they try to figure out how to break even, as opposed to starting from before that. If you look at many sporting and entertainment events, the first thing they do is sell tickets. The first thing they understand is demand. The first thing they do is get sponsor rights from television, etc. Before they do anything at all, before they commit to it. So don't get it wrong side as well. To get before, as I say, the late sprang along used to say, I believe, before you start, know how you're finishing.
Ian?
Yeah, my first comment on that, Jeffrey, is that I think if any organization that starts out thinking that financial surplus is incidental, going to be in problems. They're going to be in problems. The whole process has to be structured and planned from the top to the bottom. And I like the term that Darryl just used, that before you start, you have to know you're finished, which is primarily what that is, right? You have to know from before you start what are the ramifications of your activities, what it is, what's going to cost you, what do you need to ensure that you can run these activities. And at the end of the day, even if you decide that you're going to make a loss, you must know that from the get-go. You can't know that it can spring up on you at the end. So you must plan, you must put down what you need to do and what you need to get done, and how much it's going to require to do what you need to do from the day from the get-go, so that at the end of the day, I mean, none of us have a crystal ball, but we should try our best not to have surprises at the end of the day. So that's my first comment. The whole issue of organizations structuring themselves for success is that financial stability is important, yes. Darryl mentioned it earlier on in the program. Creativity coupled with financial stability is, I think, is a formula for success. If you can be creative but still manage yourself in that structure that you need to manage yourself in, you have a winning combination. So an organization that is able to manage the creativity, but yet still operate in a manner which is not reckless, is an organization that is good. So we need to be able to structure our organization along that line and get that whole financial stability thing sorted out. Because cash flow is not profit, right, Darryl?
Absolutely. Cash flow is not profit at all. and there are many profitable businesses and enterprises that fail. But one thing I want to endorse with what you're saying there, Ian, and Jeff, this is direct to you with regard as well to futsal. There are two types of innovation when we talk about innovation and creativity. There's process innovation and there's product innovation. Futsal was a product innovation. It was something that created a different form of entertainment. It took football and it changed it into a structured form for it to be fast-paced, indoor, more accessible, and exciting non-stop. Okay? T20 cricket was a product innovation. Maybe in the Caribbean, we might be able to come up with uniquely Caribbean activities that are product innovations. But sometimes you also have to be process innovative, and to change not what is done, but how it is done. And the how it is done, and that's what real innovation is. That we could do this in a different way in the Caribbean. We could bring together the factors of production in a unique way in the Caribbean. You look at T20 cricket. What's the process involved in moving people around different islands, marketing the different islands every time we touch an island, having the cheerleaders that represent the colors of the islands, bringing the flavor of Caribbean to the cricket. If you look at how they do it as well, you just see ideas and ideas coming at you. A fan stand, the commentator in the crowd talking to people. All of these are aspects of connecting with the audience. Let me tell you something. In sport, the most critical thing is connecting with your audience. To me, that is what sells. That is what people pay for, to feel part of something. So just remember, when we talk about innovation, and we are very innovative people, but we can't just always think of of one type. We have to think about the process sometimes, and we have to think of the product, and sometimes both are what makes it different. I think the champs in Jamaica, fantastic example, the champs events. I mean, everybody around the Caribbean knows about that and the talent that comes out of it. Sold out national stadium, you know.
Definitely. As regards to innovation, we're going to take one last break before we come back and get the closing thoughts from both Ian and Darryl. For innovation, Futsal868 takes our coaching education online. We hope to see you all next week for those participants in cycle 2 of the basic level course. See Sergio as he welcomes you to the show next week.
Hello coaches, good afternoon. I'm Sergio Gargelli, Futsal Solution Instructor. I will be one of your instructors in the next Futsal 868 course. I'm ready to start. See you soon next weekend.
It's totally online, and feel free to register via our website, our WhatsApp number. That's 1-868-787-7678, and via email, futsaltt@gmail.com. We welcome you to be a part of our Futsal 868 certified online coaching education series. So, gentlemen, it has been a pleasure. We are actually in overtime. And I want to say thank you very much for being a part of it. And it actually makes me recognize that we need to do this again, early 2021, because there's a lot of talking points that I would like to expound and expand on as we understand and we give these nuggets to our sporting organizations in Trinidad Tobago, Jamaica, and the rest of the Caribbean islands in order to make us better. Surely, as a leader, I have learned a lot from you all, and I really hope that we can continue to put our minds together to be able to help grow the sporting landscape that we all love. And for me, that is futsal and football. So with that being said, Darryl, closing thoughts, closing remarks.
Thanks for the invitation, Jeff. It was an absolute pleasure. And my closing comment was simply that we have sporting talent, we have natural talent and ability, and we have management talent and business talent in the Caribbean. So really, it's not about whether or not we have it. It's about bringing it together for the benefit of our Caribbean communities.
So, Ian?
Yeah, talent is here. The management capability is here. We proved that when we kept all of our athletes in Jamaica and we became world beaters. So the talent and the management is here, and we need to build on this. Athletics is a different kettle of fish. It's not a team sport, but the template is there. We need to foster our local environments to ensure that we build on what we have.
Gentlemen, it has been an utmost pleasure to be able to have you all on Futsal 868 Corner Talks. I ask you all to stay on as we just have our discussion thereafter. And unto you and your families, we wish God's richest blessings during this difficult period of this corona. As you say, Ian, to stay away from Miss Corona. I don't know how our female viewers will think about naming, genderizing her, you know. But nevertheless, stay away from Miss Corona in your case, Ian. Darryl, you want to put a gender to her or to no? You say no way. So to God's richest blessings, and we ask that you all have a great week ahead. And thank you very much once again. Ian and Darryl, have a good one.
Thanks a lot. Cheers.
So that was Mr. Ian McNaughton and Mr. Darryl White. As we come to end to another program, another episode of Futsal 868 Corner Talks, I'm going to say thank you very much for being a part of it. As always, and you all know the drill by now, we will not keep our feet off of racism. It's very important that we keep reminding that we are all created as one.
It is our responsibility. It is our is our responsibility
to commit to making a positive difference in our society.
Listen, read, be a standing voice against discrimination and injustices. I am Irene Marquez.
I am Dee.
I am McKenna.
I am Darryl McCullen, and racism ends with
Me.
It certainly ends with me, and I hope it ends with you. Thank you very much, and have a great and safe afternoon and a blessed week ahead. You're watching Futsal 868 Corner Talks. Good day.